I'm Laurel Walmsley with Building 43, and I'm here today with Thomas Foley at Xpert Financial. Thomas is the CEO and founder, and his company is changing the way that companies are raising capital. One tool that helps them do that is called ViVu. It's a video conferencing tool that lets the companies that are Xpert's customers make presentations to investors through their system. Well, Thomas, welcome to Building 43. Can you tell us a little bit about Xpert Financial? What do you do? How did you guys get started?
Absolutely. So thanks for having us. Xpert Financial is the private stock market. So we allow private companies to raise capital through our system. We also allow investors to get access to companies that they typically wouldn't be able to see. And then finally, we allow shareholders to get access to liquidity. So the ability to actually sell their shares before a company goes public or before a company goes through an M&A event. Now, Xpert Financial is different than other people out there because of the fact that we've gone through the process with FINRA and the SEC. We're the first registered SEC alternative trading system for private companies to raise capital as well as get secondary liquidity.
So what were companies doing before? What process are you replacing?
Sure. So, I mean, I think there's a couple processes that we're at least making more efficient, which are the typical capital raising process where a company would go out to family and friends or go out to the venture capital community and they'd try their best to set up meetings, and then after that, if they got a meeting that was set up, then they'd be able to potentially have someone look at their deal. And just that process right there is totally inefficient. Now, what we bring to the table is we bring an efficient process for companies to go through the capital raise, but we also bring massive distribution. So the concept, instead of going to Sand Hill where there's potentially 100 venture capital firms, we're trying to plug into the 10,000 largest institutions that invest in these companies. We're trying to plug into the 8 million accredited investors that are out there that are looking at these types of investments or at least want to see these types of investments. So we're replacing a traditional process that is sort of cumbersome. It doesn't have as many investors as these companies want to have. And then on the other side of that, we're replacing a process that typically when a private company or an employee of a private company starts there, they have shares. And about 20 years ago, those shares, it would take about 5 years for those shares to be worth something, and that company would IPO, and then they'd have some kind of value. In the last 10 years, it's taken somewhere between 10 to 12 years for a company to actually get to the point of being able to IPO. So the ability to get liquidity has completely disappeared. So we're replacing a process that used to work very well, but when the markets have changed, it's gone away.
Okay, so describe what your product is. What does it look like? How do companies use it? How do investors use it?
Sure. So the simplest way to explain it is, if you go to your E-Trade account or you go to your Charles Schwab account, you're able to see public company securities. You're able to see options. You're able to see ETFs or mutual funds. Now, think of that if all those companies were private there. So now you're thinking of companies like Facebook or SpaceX or Twitter or Zynga or companies like Sterling Planet or other companies like Meebo that are out there. So great companies that everyone's heard of and people use every day, but they're not public yet. So most people don't get access to them.
Right. So then the investors have access to all these companies that they wouldn't before. And the companies, it seems like having an online tool like this would really help out-of-towners, companies that aren't based in Silicon Valley.
That's right.
And it also seems like it might expand the scope of companies that are based in Silicon Valley to reach out to investors in New York or something like that. Totally,
totally. So to keep going with the first question that you had, which was how does the product work and look and function? So companies are on the system and they go through a listing process where they have to provide a certain amount of information. And this is the information that investors have told us. We need a certain amount of information to make an investment decision. So companies provide an X1, which is our sort of standardized PPM or purchased memorandum for these companies.
Okay.
They're audited financials, so people know that these companies actually are making the revenues that they say they are. Their cap tables, so you can know how many shares are outstanding, and then they do their virtual roadshow. And the virtual roadshow is the thing that we're working on with ViVu to provide. So that's that video presentation right next to their management team, so that you can see, the management team doing the presentation. You can understand what the pitch is, and you don't have to set up a meeting to go meet the team, which can take a lot of time.
Okay, so tell us about how you guys started using ViVu. How long have you been using it? What problem did it solve for you? What other options did you look at?
Sure. So with ViVu, we were looking at a ton of different video technologies. And one of the things that we liked about ViVu was the fact that there was the potential for interactivity on an ongoing basis. And the ability to actually host the video presentation right next door to the actual investor presentation or the investor deck. So the cool thing about when we use ViVu is the management team is able to reshoot and reshoot until they get the right presentation there. So it's their best pitch that they can put forward. It's right next to the slides, and then if an investor comes back to it, they can jump from slide to slide, and the video starts whatever slide they start at. So the video of when they were talking before starts at right next to that slide.
Do you help them make those videos, or do they make those on their own and just send them to you and you just put them
So
up?
we do a little bit of both. I mean, granted, this is their presentation, and we're not their investment banker. I mean, they can have an investment banker when they go through their process. We're providing the technology, but we definitely help them get to the system. We definitely help them get their information uploaded through ViVu's process, and we definitely make sure that that we give them some feedback of, okay, we like this presentation more than the other one, or this one was a little bit long-winded here, or what we've heard from some feedback is you're missing some points on this slide. Maybe we should come back and fix that.
What are you hearing from the investors that you work with? I mean, are these videos effective? Is this technology, does it fully replace the sort of roadshow as it's supposed to?
Yes and no. So when people have seen this, they've said, wow, this is really cool. And what's great about it is it gets them past sort of step 1, step 2, step 3, which is your first call with the analyst, and then you might be able to have a call with the managing director of one of these funds, and then after that you might get a meeting where you come in. With this presentation, you're able to get all the way to that sort of most important big meeting with the partnership, and they can watch it wherever they want. They can be on a beach, they can be at their house, they can be at the office. There's no scheduling conflicts there. But on the other side, there's a lot of funds that are out there that still say, I need to meet with these people face to face and be able to ask them questions.
And how do you qualify investors to make sure that they're legit and that they're
Yeah.
that they are, that the companies that you're working with should be taking their money?
Yeah. So we go through a pretty full process on both the company side for the company going through listing due diligence and also on the investor side. So when investors come to the system, they're able to indicate what they're interested in investing in. They're able to indicate exactly what type of investor they are. They have to be sophisticated, which means they're either an accredited investor or a qualified institutional buyer. And an accredited investor has over $1 million in net worth, or a qualified institutional buyer is a fund that has over $100 million in net worth. And we have to check that out. And then we have to do background checks on that. And we have to do run screens to make sure that you are who you say you are, and the companies that you work with or that you've invested in are what you actually said they were, because companies care about that. They want to know who's investing in them, and they at least want to know who's looking at their information. So we take that very seriously.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Have you gotten any feedback on how, do you have a sense of how the investors are using these videos? I mean, have you basically had any surprises now that you've been up and running on this tool for a while?
Not yet. I mean, the biggest thing that we've sort of gotten back is, okay, great, now what's the next step here, or how do I get more interaction with this company? And so I think what we're finding is we're either going to use ViVu for a more live video conferencing tool in the future where they can interact with the company and the investor, or we're going to have to figure out a way to do sort of better scheduling through the system for in-person meetings, or in ViVu meetings, which would be great too.
That would be cool. Yeah, tell me a little bit more about how you've worked with ViVu. I mean, are you a typical customer of theirs, or it sounds like this is a very specific maybe use case. Tell me a little bit more about how they support you and how you came to fully integrate them with your own offering.
So we have a really great relationship with ViVu. I mean, the coolest thing about it is we were their first customer. So right when they were launching, we actually got connected to them through our main investor, Tim Draper, because he had invested in ViVu as well. So we checked out their technology. We thought it was really interesting, and we set up the first contract and business development relationship with them. And they, I think, realized right then, this is not the traditional client. All the asks that we were having, can you do a system where you basically have it frozen and recorded for a long time? A lot of video conferencing solutions do that, but they do it live. So we asked them to sort of step back and create a customized solution for us, which we really appreciate, and they've been great on the support side. From their normal traditional group, I mean, they're being used everywhere right now. They're being used at conferences, especially when you want to live stream conferences and you're not there, you're able to see it through a ViVu. when you're at the conference, you're able to see people asking questions and all the Twitter updates and all the social media pieces that are happening while you have the presenter that's up on stage, while you have the presentations going on.
So is that the main difference from like a WebEx where you're just watching the presentation itself or just the video itself? I mean, is ViVu the only tool that you've seen that kind of marries the two together?
I think that ViVu does a really good job of allowing for the real type of collaborative, ongoing, live communication, and especially in the business world. And WebEx is great because of the fact that you can sort of share your screen. Right. They've done a good job because now Cisco's getting into all the video conferencing solutions. And I think ViVu is a solution that could marry that, or also could marry that in a much more cost-effective way.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Is there more that you are working on in terms of stuff with ViVu? Are there features that you hope that they add in the future that you think would bolster what you're doing?
Some of the stuff that we've seen from them, and I don't know how much I'm allowed to talk to about it,
okay,
but they have some really cool things for interactivity. And cool. If we want to get closer and closer to how real road shows work, as we get a more active user base on our system, it could actually make sense to do much more live road shows where you have the management team doing their presentation at that point in time. You have 50 or 100 or 1,000 investors that are all watching on the other end, and they're able to interact. They're able to raise their hand and ask questions during it. And then you can have that whole thing recorded that other people can come back into.
So that company could be still making their presentation in Atlanta.
That's right.
But instead you're inviting the investors to watch it in real time, ask their questions,
yep,
and then those who missed the boat on the first run can watch it later.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, so I mean that would be really exciting.
Yeah.
And that gets you to the point where people say, yeah, I'm comfortable with not having to meet them in person because of the fact that they get to actually interact with them. And I think that's the next step for ViVu. We've also talked to them about a lot of things, about conferences through our own system, about basically the first time you could ever have a virtual conference, and that's way out, sort of in the future for us. But it's also something that they're definitely game for exploring too.
Now, something you mentioned at the beginning was that you were the first company to get SEC registration.
When we started back in 2009, and the main focus then was get through FINRA and get through the SEC registration. And so we became a broker.
What's FINRA?
FINRA is the organization that regulates all broker-dealers.
Okay.
So all the investment banks that you see out there, FINRA is the group that supervises them. Okay. And if you want to become a new broker-dealer, you have to get through them, as well as any registered representative. Anyone that has to sell securities, they're regulated by FINRA.
This sounds like a formidable process.
It was. It took about 2 years to get through.
Okay.
Because it was the first time that we were going through it. People have done this before in the public markets, and they've done it with public securities. They've never done it before with private securities. So there was very limited amount of regulation that was in this space. And going through this process, actually new rules were created around governing this space. And there was a couple other competitors that popped up during this time that are trying to do this, but doing it in different ways, and doing it in ways that we feel, we do a very company-friendly approach, and they do sort of more of a, they're just trying to create a market approach.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like Xpert Financial is doing really cutting-edge stuff, and also using, really cutting-edge technologies to help your business. It's really exciting stuff. Thanks so much for talking with us today. It's great to hear about the work you're doing.
Thanks so much, Laurel.
All right. Nice meeting you.
Absolutely.